The WNBA referee's official report on the Fever vs. Sun game was just released, and people should take note because it not only makes things worse, but also reveals the entire corrupt system for what it truly is. The referees have had their say and have addressed all of the criticism, and what we received was nothing less than a masterclass in how to talk complete and utter nonsense while acting like the good guys. He stated, Marina Maber's technical foul from the Fever Sun game has been upgraded to a flagrant 2. According to the league, a flagrant 2 comes from a typical fine. Furthermore, Sophie Cunningham received a separate fine for her hard foul with 40 seconds remaining in the game. No players would have been suspended. This infuriated many fans because had Marina Maber's foul been upgraded to a flagrant 2 as it was, she would have been ejected during play. I don't believe that any of this involving Sophie and Yassi would have occurred at the end of the game if the referees had taken control of the game much earlier. I do believe that if they had ejected Marina Maber during that entire play when she totally blindsided Caitlin, wasn't a basketball play, it was after the whistle. So if she had been ejected at that moment, I believe it would have set the tone for the rest of the game. What we're seeing here isn't just poor officiating, it's a systematic targeting of Indiana Fever players that is so obvious that even the referees' own explanations can't hide it any longer. If you're wearing an Indiana Fever jersey, especially if your name is Caitlin Clark, you are literally 10 times less likely to have a decision go your way. That's not hyperbole, it's the reality right in front of us. Marina Maber chooses to remove Caitlin Clark from the situation when she gets stabbed in the eye. Although she doesn't even see it, the refs simply responded, no, it wasn't worth an injection. However, an update has been made, and as a result, she has been promoted to a flagrant 2. This means that all they needed to do was remove her, and if the referees had already ejected Marina, none of this would have occurred. I hope that nothing more occurs in the Sophie Cunningham scenario. What did head referee Ashley Gloss think of this terrible game? Prepare for this gem. Maber's contact did not justify ejection, nor did it meet the requirements for a flagrant penalty. Are you serious? Marina Maber was caught off guard. How does that not rise to a level of ejection? Someone please explain. I believe that even in the NBA, that might have been an ejection, and I believe that both of them would have received one after Caitlin Clark knocked her to the ground from behind after Clark was already dealing with getting poked in the eye. Expelled, she stated. Additionally, it did not meet the criteria for flicker 1 foul penalty 2. Caitlin Clark was given a technical foul after Sheldon Clark reached out to her in an unsportsmanlike manner. What kind of sense is that? She was hit in the eye, and from one angle, it appears that she was almost punched. She then tried to get up, but the girl attacked her, and Marina came and knocked her down. It's crazy. So you have to wait until something happens so the lead can be determined. Viewership may decline for yet another, but hold on, things will improve. To set the record straight, Kloss claims that Clark was given a technical penalty for being unsportsmanlike toward Sheldon after she had her eye gouged. That's the level of backwards reasoning we're dealing with here. The reasoning is that Clark deserves to be bullied because she's a trash talker. Okay, if that's the case, but people are now saying that the media is saying Caitlin Clark puts all the blame on herself. In addition, if you want to say that J.C. Sheldon gets in her face and does everything up until the eye gouge, no one puts the eye gouge on themselves. This is similar to saying, oh, she puts everything on herself at the push-off, merely called a hand check, and the push-off doesn't happen. When Sophie Cunningham ultimately chooses to defend her teammate, she is removed for a flagrant 2 infraction, but Marina Maber, who first committed what any reasonable person would consider assault, only received a technical foul after. The majority of us are talking about it, man. There's no way you're coming after the game and then saying, oh, it should have been a flagrant 2. Oh, we should have. There was a huge public outcry when they quietly upgraded Maber's foul to a flagrant 2, but they still didn't eject or suspend him. Look, you're catching the smoke, and now you want to change it. You should do it throughout the game. Okay, then call it what it is, guy, and quit being so dumb. Here's where things become really interesting, by which I mean very infuriating, and the statistics don't lie, even when the referees do, Caitlin. If you're enjoying, please subscribe. Let that sink in for a second. Clark has incurred 17% of all flagrant fouls in the league this season. One player is responsible for almost 1/5 of all flagrant fouls in the league. Either Clark is the most reckless player in WNBA history, or this is the crazy idea opposing teams are targeting her and the referees are allowing it to happen. However, the referees want us to think that this is all a coincidence. What you mean by get control of the game is to, in your own words, call the fouls that are actually happening on the floor right and consistently call the fouls that are actually happening on the floor. Okay, not just if somebody swings and misses, right? Like consistently call the fouls, co-coach. This means that the most talented, most watched, and most marketable player in women's basketball just so happens to be the target of disproportionate violence, and it has nothing to do with the way games are officiated. Relating to your team, or do you believe this is a league-wide issue? I believe it's a league-wide issue because I've witnessed a number of altercations in the league thus far. After all, poor officiating is bad officiating. What did you think of Sophie Cunningham's flagrant foul on JC towards the end? Do you think it was a flagrant foul to defend Caitlin or the team, or do you think it was just a flagrant foul? Ask about the game as well. I mean, you guys came to talk about basketball, so come on, Coach Stephanie White. She anticipated this from the beginning. She really warned the officials during the first quarter of the Sun game that emotions were rising and that something would happen if they didn't take control of the situation. The referees chose to ignore her, allowed the game to grow out of control, and then pretended to be startled when everything blew up. Multiple sources confirm that this isn't just about one game, even though the WNBA acknowledged that referees made mistakes and lost control of the Fever Sun game. However, Sophie Cunningham, the player who was defending her teammate, received the most disciplinary action. Refereeing complaints have become so common in the WNBA that they represent a pattern of errors that are degrading the quality of play, but Indiana seems to be the most affected. It's unbelievable that they can hire WNBA officials who are incapable of controlling the game. Half of a referee's job is to keep players under control and ensure that things don't get out of control at random. Then you watch things get out of control and think, dude, this is gonna go so viral later. I'm certain that's what the referees. The most damning evidence of this corruption isn't just what happened in one game, but the pattern of how different players are treated for similar actions. At the end of the season last year, I said something like, I really hope that changes in the W between last year and this year, or that they get better refs that kind of actually give it and like know what they're doing, and they still haven't done that. We were thinking last night during the Fever and the Sun game, dude, because they had no control over that game at all. All right, Marina, let's be clear about what happened here. Mom makes a cheap shot that sends Clark flying to the ground and initially leaves with a technical Sophie. Cunningham responds with a hard but controlled foul to convey a message, and she is immediately dismissed. Although Cunningham's foul was deliberate, it was also the type of foul that occurs in basketball when referees lose control of a game. She finished a few seconds too late, glared at the players, and ended her record-setting sophomore tasket by riding her head. Despite this, she somehow avoided making the same dirty play that Mabry did on Clark. In the ref's perverted reasoning, the broadcasters called it out in real time, claiming that Cunningham's action was more worthy of ejection than Mabry's assault, and that if the officials had handled things sooner, we wouldn't be in this predicament. Even the people calling the game were shocked by what they were seeing when she said there is no place in the game for what Sophie Cunningham did. But what about what she didn't say about what the other two people said? Stephanie White, the other Indiana Fever coach, deserves a great deal of credit for having the guts to publicly call out this corruption in her post-game press conference. She gave one of the most devastating critiques of WNBA officiating we've ever heard, saying that everyone is getting better except for the officials. However, White didn't stop there. She made it clear that this isn't just about one game, but about an entire season of biased officiating against her team. The disrespect right now for our team has been pretty unbelievable, White said. She is entirely correct. You can tell the system is flawed when your coach must spend press conferences defending fundamental fairness rather than discussing basketball. Essentially, White called out the entire WNBA for having a phony accountability system every year when we have our league meetings in the fall and in the spring, saying, I don't know if I have a feeling that the system works. White also brought up an important point that the referees don't want to acknowledge. There is supposedly a system in place for teams to file grievances about officiating, but it doesn't work. Nothing has changed, so I'm not sure, aside from the fact that they keep posting videos and talking about how difficult their jobs are. They say things like, look, their job is hard. Let's say that their job is hard, right? The game has changed a lot, and players are now faster, better, bigger, and stronger. They're also as good as they've ever been, and they're as athletic as they've ever been. Now that everything is moving quickly, everyone is improving with the exception of the officials after all the criticism and the evidence after being called out. The message is clear. If you're an Indiana Fever player, you'll be held to a completely different standard than everyone else in the league. The league's investigation is reportedly ongoing, but we all know how generous the WNBA was to admit the obvious after being forced into a corner by overwhelming evidence. Sophie Cunningham, who was defending her teammate Marina Murray, received a fine and moved on with her life.